Hello friends, and welcome to my YouTube channel Art Horizon. In this episode, we're going to explore the color of shadow, particular its saturation, how vibrant or how dull the color should be in a shadow. And also, we're going to talk about harmonizing the painting through the shadow shapes. Let's first understand what is saturation of the color. Color or hue means green, red, yellow. Now, that color has two characteristics. One is saturation, another is a temperature. Temperature is cool and warm, but saturation is how vibrant the color is. The most pure pigment of that color is straight out of tube. The minute you add anything to that color, whether it's white, gray, or complementary color like red to this green apple, the saturation of that color, the vibrancy, will change and we will desaturate that color. So the question is, how saturated the shadow should be relative to the local color of the object. The richer the color of the object, the richer the shadow can be in its color. But in a relationship of shadow color to light color, shadow color will always be desaturated, will always be less. And that has a very simple explanation. Shadow is the absence of light. We can't see well without light. So everything in the shadow becomes more mysterious. We can't see color in the dark. And so the information about color of the object, we always pick up on a light shape, especially area closest to the shadow. So if you were to paint this apple, you would take a darkness, which could be raw umber, black, and then you're going to infuse that darkness with a little bit of a local color of this apple. And you're going to control the value so it doesn't get too light. So you can add cadmium yellow deep, a little bit of cadmium red, and maybe a touch of blue. And you're going to create a desaturated version of your local color green. And if you're going to paint a shadow shape of red apple, you're going to start the same with the absence of color like black, raw umber. Then you're going to spice it up by adding a little bit more red into it. And so if these two apples meet in one painting, their shadow shapes will be different, yet they will be unified by one ingredient, that darkness, that absence of light, the raw umber or black with a little bit of red and a little bit of green. Yet they still gonna be closely connected with being desaturated. The more colors desaturated, the easier they are harmonized. The more colors saturated, a pure green and a pure red, the harder to harmonize them, to bring them together. So the colors of light shapes will be more different of two apples, but the color of the shadows will be closely related. And that's how we harmonize painting, by harmonizing and unifying their shadow shapes, making them look more similar than different. I will demonstrate that on the example of beautiful painting by Pushman, Still Life with the Rider. Notice how every shadow in this painting, no matter whether it belongs to the green bowl or the white cloth or the terracotta figurine, they have a common ingredients of the background and warmer colors of yellow greens in them. So shadow shapes in this painting come closer together, while the light shapes of each object are really different in its value, saturation, and hue. Next, I'm going to demonstrate how changing the saturation and the color of shadow affects the look of the portrait. Let's look at the painting. Our shadow shape on the face is very warm and relatively dark. The hair is darker and also warmer. The shadow of the neck is similar. Let's imagine that instead of very raw amber colorless short, he is now wearing a very intense pale green with yellow short. If the shadow shape of the green short will be influenced by the color of the short, then the color of that shadow shape must be green. And that's what I'm painting. That's a dark green. Notice what happened. Now the shadow shape that flows down his face to the neck gets disrupted and cut off by the color of the short. And there is very little we can do to really unify them. And there is a more variation in the color of the shadows than was before. Even though this green shadow represents the local color of the light, it really doesn't serve the painting very well. Let's see if we can color correct it and make that green look more desaturated and still look shadowy. I will take raw umber. Now I'm going to paint my shadow with less color. And make sure that this is just a dark shadow. Now notice that I can actually lose the edge of that shadow shape into the neck and lose that definition. The shadow hides the details, so the shadow can unify the shadow of the neck with the shadow of the short and become one solid shape. Notice that by lessening the color of the shadow, the short didn't become less colorful. It still looks really bright green, but the shadow, the flow of the shadows is more unified than before. Having less local color in the shadow benefits the painting because it harmonizes and unifies the shadow into the bigger, stronger shape than if they are broken by smaller parts. In shadows, we look for unity. In light, we look for differences. Shadows in composition serve a function of establishing the rhythm and a quiet, a resting space for the eyes, a more mysterious place to hold the light and let the light tell its full story of anatomy, the features, the textures of the skin. Thank you so much. If you liked that video, please subscribe and share it with others. Thank you so much again.